Hello, and welcome to Impacting the Classroom, the podcast that talks about big topics that have an even bigger impact in early education. I'm your host, Marnetta Larimer. So, what's impacting the classroom? Getting started with class in a program can be very challenging when you don't prepare your staff for that transition. Building a strong culture around class that gets educators excited and motivated in their work can help ease that transition and lead to better results. Dr. Mike Jacobs joins us today, principal and instructional leader at Apple Tree Early Learning Public Charter School. You may recognize him from Interact Now, where he recently presented. Hello, Dr. Mike.
Hello, so glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Marnetta.
Oh, I am just excited that you were able to make the time. But right, I'm very interested in this subject. It's a great time, especially when organization systems are trying to figure out what they're going to do with this new allotment of funds, right? As they're getting class into their systems or building their next level of class in their systems. So I think this is going to be a very timely discussion.
Yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump in?
sure. Again, welcome. So glad to be here. I'm Dr. Mike Jacobs. I am a principal in Washington, D.C., serving the most earliest learners, the 3 and 4-year-olds. I'm so happy to be an early childhood educator and advocate for early literacy. So glad to be here again. It's a great opportunity.
Wonderful. Oh, that was shorter than I thought it was going to be. You look, that was the time you could have got all the snaps. You're just like straight to the point. This is what I am. So first of all, I just want to say yay, right? I'm always excited when I see males in the classroom, but especially in our earliest learning classroom. So thank you for being there and representing and being that inspiration for children in those classrooms.
Yeah, I started in kindergarten and I never left. Pre-K4 though is my pride and joy. Love it dearly. So it's just been amazing. And I've always wanted to, change the face of the classroom and be that, positive representative for our students. So, I come to work in my sneakers and blazer, the kids get to see me in different light. And I just appreciate that. And they learn so much. And I'm grateful for just to serve them because it is a great opportunity.
I hear so many classy things happening in how you come to work, right? You are wanting to make yourself relatable so that children can connect and you can build those relationships.
Yes.
So let's dive into my first question for you.
Sure. Yeah.
How did you build a class culture within your program?
So I recognize that people are the greatest asset, right? So I really had to focus on making sure that the people that I'm working with, they know the why, they know how to do just how to set up their classroom and how to build relationships with kids, right? Because at the very foundation, I remember when I got out of the classroom, my principal said, one thing that you're good at is building relationships. So we're going to make you a dean. You're going to be the person to do that, right? But at the very foundation level, if we're able to build those relationships with students, that teacher-to-student interaction is much more positive, right? And I have a motto at my school, safe, happy, and fed. If kids feel safe, if they feel happy and they are fed, all of their needs are met, that's where learning happens, right? So foundationally, it starts with our people and making sure that they know exactly why. They have a vision, right? So once I started the year, I led with the vision of why this is important and why we need to lead with this. And they've been through the process before, but they've never had an instructional leader who has actually been through the entire process, right? So I was a teacher. My principals observed me with class. I'm on the admin side now leading with class. So having that lens is also really important as well. So I'm not just going in, I'm doing observations with class, right? We're living and breathing this because if you look at the indicators, they're emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support, right? So when you think about all of those things, it encompasses the early childhood classroom. Right? Making sure that the environment is nurturing, is not a negative climate, right? We focus on that regard for student perspective, right? So that they feel safe, they can come to the classroom and talk and be engaging. And the educator in the instructional support, they're the subject matter experts. And here's the thing, we actually have to honor the profession a lot more, right? In a sense of like, teachers are subject matter experts. Yes. They are the SMEs, right? So I want them to know that and receive that. So the first time I said that they're subject matter experts, they're like, what? What are you telling me, right? But I help them to understand, like, they have so much power in their classroom that they are able to change the trajectory of lives, right? So building those higher order thinking questions, making sure that, you pull in that background knowledge, right? All of those things. So when we look at class in itself, like, it really hones the foundation around what an early childhood classroom is supposed to look like, sound like, and feel like. So I lead with the people. And another thing that I do is getting to know my staff really well. So I'm not only focusing on building relationships with students, right? Like, that's gonna come. Like, I love the babies, they'll come jump on my shoulder. Like, that's gonna happen, right? But really focusing on the strengths of my staff members, bringing them into that process, that planning process with me, because as leaders, sometimes we just think like, oh, we need to think about the plan and just go execute it for teachers, right? No, they're a part of my brain and my thinking process so that I'm able to now create that buy-in so that they're like, oh, well, we didn't just make this decision on our own. When we made it as a collective, and we have a collective responsibility to make sure that all students learn. And I can talk a lot, so you just let me know.
No, I'm not talking any of this combo. Like, this is great, right? So you're talking about this parallel process, right? In this culture, those indicators, those behaviors that we see in the class tool and how it mirrors your interactions with your teachers, right? Those adult to adult interactions. And
Yes.
that really is key, right? It's the best, it's the best space for learning
Yeah.
too, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you're making sure that their needs are met so that they can do what they need to do. And I think
And that, yep.
ugh, what I was in my mind, you're just saying so much. So in my mind, when you talk about that SME and just the shock and awe that they have when you were just like, you're this me. And they're like, what? Right. When we talk about, I don't want to use the word damaged,
Mhm.
but just how hurt and impacted teachers are
Mm,
by things that happen to them and how
mhm.
it affects their efficacy, right? Like their ability to know that they are capable, able,
Yeah.
you know, bodies to, you know,
Do the work.
initiate change and do the work.
Yeah.
I think my heart would have broke if I would have said that and I got that reaction. Like, what? You didn't know this? Like,
Yeah.
what happened to you and how do we get this back? Right? We can't do this without you.
Exactly.
So just noticing that, you know, you're instilling that in them and giving them that,
Yeah.
right? Because they have what they need.
They do. Yeah.
Nobody can do their job. That's why they're there.
Right.
Right? That's why it hurts when they're gone.
Hey, let me tell you, please don't call out. Please come to work.
Come, no, come. What can I
Yeah.
do for you?
Yeah.
Right? They're irreplaceable, right?
Right.
And we're feeling that in the field at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, the teachers, they have a lot on their plates. And, sometimes people say, oh, when you come to work, you leave that stuff outside. No, like, people need to be able to bring their full selves to work. So, and even on a very foundational level, just getting to know them. Hey, how are you? How was your weekend?
Mhm.
How's your daughter? How, like, those little moments, like, even if it's for 5 seconds, you just connect with someone so that when my day starts, I go downstairs to my teachers, I greet everyone, and I pop in if I remember something. Somebody told me like, oh, I had a graduation, oh, I had I'll check in on that, right? Because that's a level of accountability for me to be like, okay, you told me you were going to do something. What's going on? Or how's your kid? Or how these things are happening? Because they're like, oh, he actually cares about me. I do, right? I want to know how you're doing, because if you're not well as the educator in the room, then students won't be well. And I had to make that shift, because we often say, oh, we're doing this work for the kids, we're doing the work for the kids. Yes. However, the adults are the one that are working with the students, right? Directly with the students. Because
Right?
I'm in my office most of the day. I come down, do what I need to do on the ground level, and kids know my name. And that's the other thing too. As a principal, kids need to know your face. They need to know who you are. So you got to be able to come down and as a school leader to make sure that it happens. But again, thinking about making sure that I go down and I have those conversations and I lead with that inspirational leadership and empower, those teachers to be their best selves. Because again, I was gonna give an example. I was at happy hour, just randomly being grown, randomly, randomly talking to a lady at the bar, and come to find out she was a lawyer, big lady, and she said to me, when I told her that I was in education, she was like, you have to focus on the adults. You have to focus on the people that are on the ground. Teachers aren't in the let me tell you, they come out swinging every day.
Every day.
They come out and it's just like, how am I, as a school leader who set the vision, set the tone, set everything, like how am I showing up to support them and making sure that they have everything they need? And I have a saying in my building, teachers get whatever they want. I don't care. Like, I'll answer questions later. But if it's to make sure that it's a supporting students, the answer is always yes. You know what I'm saying? Because so many times they're being told no. As an educator, so many times I've been told, nope, you can't do that. Nope, there's a budget for, or there's a system for this, or no, I want provide students with opportunities, experiences, and so many things. Because there are a lot of our students, they don't get to have those experiences. And last week, Marnetta, I did a session on early instruction. I love guided reading and early literacy. So one of the points were, when a child sees a stop sign, they're able to, some students, not all, are able to quickly recognize, oh, the words on that, they said stop, and it has a meaning, right? But think about a child who is constantly riding the bus. They are riding around in a car, and no one says to them, hey, you know what what that is? That's a stop sign. It means to stop. They wouldn't have any context of that, right? So from a program level, we have 11 different units, right? So how are we using class to ensure that the environment is rich? We're providing students with higher order thinking questions, language modeling, quality of feedback. And how are we providing them information, right? Like, you can print a stop sign and put it up in dramatic play. Like, that's a stop sign. And what do you do when you stop, right? So when next time that you're in the car with mommy and daddy, or you're riding the bus and the bus stop comes out of stop, that means stop. Making those connections, right? Like, but again, if you don't empower teachers to think like, oh, I actually know this, right? They have to get out of their head. And these are things that I communicate with my folks. Like, get out of your head. You have all that you need. You have all the lived experiences for our students, right? And the more that they come to school and get your brain, oh my God, they're going to be brilliant, right? But I think it's a struggle sometimes because, again, they've been broken so many times. They've been told no so many times. And it's just like, well, I'm here to build you up. And and it's not even so much about building them up to be educators, right? It's building them up to be strong human beings, right? And that a lot of educators, once they leave their education programs, or once they get through, they take their praxis, they're not touching a book.
No. They'll do that those required PD hours.
Right.
And that's it.
That's it. Right. So then it's just like, well, how are you building yourself? Right. And remember, like I said, that first level is people. Right. So as an educator, like, how am I feeding you this information that it's bite-sized? So that you're able to get it. Because I know once you leave work and you're working with 3 and 4-year-olds, 15, 16, 17, some classrooms has 23 of them, you're going to be tired. So I don't fault you for not wanting to read a book, right? You probably want to go sleep. Heard. But as educators, that part, right? We need to be lifelong learners and really believe that and really live that experience.
Yeah. Again, so much thoughtfulness in your approach to creating this nice class-centric environment and culture in your program. As you were talking about, knowing your people and building those relationships, what a great mirror to, how impactful that is for them to do with children, right? Because, there's caring about me and, being able to recite who my husband's, is, that I have children, etc. But the type of questions that you're asking and, revisiting comes from an authentic place, which is a whole different thing, right? That genuine, authentic, like, I care about you. There's no fake in there because you can tell the difference, and people arrive differently based on how that approach is, right? So if it's this performative check-in of it's way different than that, the depth in which we're really trying to understand them and get to know them and value them as those human beings. And that translates, as you said, to the work that they're doing with the children in the classroom.
Yeah. And thank you for highlighting that. Because even sometimes I don't make that connection because I'm doing it so naturally. Right. So it's just like, okay, these are the steps that I'm doing, but I know that ultimately it reaches somewhere and it does something for, the teacher and the student.
Yep, absolutely. So we talked about this class culture, right? And its importance, and how impactful it is for not only the teachers, but the students. How did you establish this culture and ensure that it's not just around class observations, right?
Yeah.
And it's this thing that's just going to happen to them, right? How did you really build this importance of it being bigger than just class observations?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the year, we all have that PD week where we launch, right? So the theme for my school year, and since I started at Apple Tree, this has been my theme: Ready, Set, Sail. Right? And there's a book on it, a kid's book, Ready, Set, Sail. So sometimes it's going to be rocky. Sometimes it's going to be smooth sailing. Sometimes we're going to be cruising. But there are moments when we are going to have to get everybody on the ship on the top deck. Everybody's going to work, right? And class was one of the indicators where I said, this is what we're going to die for. If we're going to do this well, we have to implement it and have to do it well. So they understood on a larger level, like, okay, this is our metric. Like, this is what deems us a qualified institution, and this is what we need. Because sometimes principals don't tell them the real thing. you know, this is just what we have to do. So
Yeah,
why am I doing something if you're not going to tell me why I'm doing it, right? What is the purpose of this, right? So from the foundation level, I gave them the why. I tell them why we're doing this. This is why, right? When I come into your classroom, I want to see good quality education for our babies, because if they don't have anything else, they can come to school and
right.
get that from you.
Right.
you
Uh,
know?
yeah, that's deep, right? And I think that's one of the things that really drove me in the classroom is just being not either a filler, right?
Mhm.
a filler of knowledge or, an expander of that knowledge, right? Just depending on the children that were, coming into the space and what they needed. Yeah, you just never know. And you have to be ready for all of those things. So
You have to be
having that
ready.
as that metric, right? And this is just the hill that we're going to die on. This is what we are doing in all things, right? Makes it less painful when it comes to the class observation because you're doing this stuff naturally every day, all day long.
Right. And that's the thing. When, so with that, one of the big rocks was planning, right? So I set the vision, ready, set, sail. This is the hill we're going to die on. This is what everybody's looking at when they come. So we're going to be real about it. This is what people are looking for. We want to make sure that we're doing well at this. But then making sure that, you know, they, they understand the why, they get it, and they're doing it already in their classrooms, right? Like, I had to convince, like, and give them examples. Like, during your read aloud, that's concept development, right? However, if you're not planning for that read aloud, that's where you fall short. That's where you
Mhm.
get the ones and twos, right? That scale, right? One through
Right,
seven, where are we falling on the scale? If you're not planning effective instruction, then you're not going to be able to bring in that background knowledge. Then you're not going to be able to, give that quality feedback because you yourself wasn't prepped and planned and studied enough to make that happen, right? So one of the big rocks, like I said, was planning, making sure that they're internalizing their lessons and really processing, like, okay, because from a program level, all of the materials and everything is given to them, right? But
right.
for me, I want to see that you are internalizing this stuff. So once a week, they send me lesson plans. And in those lesson plans, I want to see misconceptions. And they were sick. When I tell you, they were like, but they saw the benefit of it, right? Because then they were like, oh, I was able to answer a question right away because I thought about that student in my planning. So I knew he was going to ask me something like this, and here's the response. So we're thinking about those misconceptions and the responses to those misconceptions, right? Because don't stop. We often stop. Oh, what is the misconception, right? No, I want you to think about an answer and think about a student in your classroom. You're like, you know what? Little Johnny's gonna ask this question, and guess what? I'm gonna be ready for him when he asks it.
Right,
you
right,
know and that's the next layer of planning that I want teachers to be able to embody all the time, so that when they get in front of challenges, or and even still, then if and no misconceptions come up, they can bring up a misconception, right? Like, you know what? I used to have a teacher. She used to do, I'm gonna make an error. I'm gonna make an error because guess what? In this classroom, it's a safe place to make errors,
Mm-hmm. Most
right?
definitely. Yes.
That's that emotional support, right? Kids feel safe to talk to the teacher and make errors.
Yep.
They'll raise their hand and and share something. And if it's not right, the teacher is not gonna say, "Oh, that was horrible. You shouldn't." You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, let's talk about that, right?
Yes.
Let's engage. What, who can help a friend, and then circle back to that friend, right? Good teaching strategies, because
Right.
we need those, right? And making sure that we hold kids accountable to their learning too, right? So that
Yeah.
planning piece from a program level is important, because then you're able to tie in those pieces to class. So one of the things that I did, Marnetta, was I separated my cohorts, right? So I did lead teachers
Okay.
and TAs, right? Separated them, because what I realized, the TAs were drowned under the lead teachers. They won't say much in PD when I do them together, right?
Oh, no.
It's just
No.
like, what is going on?
Because again, they don't feel that value, right? They don't feel they have anything to bring to the table.
Right. And it's almost like a deflection of responsibility, right? You deal with
Right.
that. Guess what? Not in this building, right? Not
We
in
all
my
in this together.
right? So it's just like, I separated them. I give the lead teachers what they need, and I create a scope and sequence for the TAs. When I tell you, it was the most powerful thing that I could have done in my leadership practice, because I had TAs now getting up, practicing, looking at standards, like, okay, what is the standard for this? Oh, here's the question I can ask to support this standard, right? Then in the practice, I'm giving them feedback, their peers are giving them feedback. It was a safe little incubator where they can be their full self and they can
Yeah.
learn something. And no one really, like, when I say everybody participated and everybody was like, all right, but they also get to see their peers doing the same thing, because sometimes they don't get to see that, right? They don't get to see what other people are doing in their classroom, but they're like, oh, I like how you did that. All right, I'm gonna do that too, right? Or I'm gonna put that in my toolbox, because teaching assistants also need their toolbox filled as well,
They
right?
do. They do. Because their interactions matter as well, right? And that's oftentimes what classrooms are missing. We're so focused on the lead teacher, we forget like there's another person in here with these individuals, right? Who should be doing the same thing. Where's that disconnect?
Exactly. And I say this all the time. I said, everybody carries a load for class. Not just one person. So guess what? The TA better be leading morning meeting or doing a read aloud, right? It's no games. Everybody does it. And if the score doesn't reflect well, then that tells me that there's some more instruction that needs to happen so that we can build this person up, right? Because it gets stressful for the lead teacher to have to carry the load, right?
Yeah.
All day, all
All
for that
day.
whole observation time. Like,
Especially with class, you know how intensive and intentional
yeah,
that is.
yeah.
You be
So
like, my throat is dry.
yeah, like, can you say something, please? Like, but again, that's where we built that collective responsibility in the beginning. Everybody knew that they had a part to play, on this ship. When we're on this class ship, this is what we're going to do. Like, everybody does it. So being clear with that, and they knew when the day was coming, I was like, all right, and they showed me their plans, what we're gonna do, and also, they were stressed out. My team was stressed out a little bit around just like, how are we gonna do? And I'm just like, you're fine. Like, do the things that you do all the time,
Hmm.
and trusting them to do that. Because what I've experienced is that, school leaders prep and prep for that specific day. No, I'm not doing that. What I'm going to do is start from August
Right.
and infuse PD. So one of the things that I talked about during the Interact conference was providing that PLC and PD. So it's similar to the PD that I did with the TAs and the lead teachers, providing them with that PD, right? 30-minute bite size, quick, because we know adult learners, our attention span is real
Hmm.
short, right? So we're not going to sit in a 2-hour PD and you think you're going to get a whole lot of stuff done, right? Quick, 20, 30-minute PD, You get direct instruction. You get to practice. You get to I model it because I want you to know how I want to see it done. Then you get to practice. You get to put your own spin on it. We give you some feedback, and then I send you on your way. Right? Quick, bite size, and it's not overwhelmingly like, oh my God, we gotta go sit in this PD today, right?
Right.
Because they
Right.
know they're coming out with something that's gonna be beneficial to them. So that was key to making sure that throughout the year there's a good scope and sequence. So from a program level, once we got back our scores from last year, we looked at, I looked at all the classrooms and said, where were we low? How can we get better? Right. So one of the indicators was regard for student perspective, right? Realize like, okay, everybody is either in the low, mid-range for regard for student perspective. We can't have that, right? What can we do to boost these scores? So PD was surrounded around regard for student perspective, and those indicators underneath regard for student perspective. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And you know what was powerful? Tell you a secret.
Ready.
There are different indicators on the class where they come to observe, right? So morning meeting, read aloud, snack time, so forth. What we looked at is how can these varying indicators show up in the different components of the day?
Absolutely.
Because you will get really high in morning meeting for certain things, but then when snack time comes, it's looking like, okay, what's going on, right? It looking real low. But what we sat down and had conversations about is this was the sessions with my lead teachers. Hey, what does this look like during snack time? What does this look like during recess? Because some observers, they observe during recess. Mealtime in the morning, breakfast, because they start when students come in. What does this look like? They're like, oh, we can do this. So now their wheels start to turn because they're understanding like, oh, man, we didn't have too much conversation during mealtime.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that could maybe be why you're low in certain areas because you weren't talking to the children. Please talk to the children.
Right.
Please talk. Yes, we know that they're eating, but you can also teach them to chew their food and talk.
Right.
Right? We do it all the time. It's called when we go to happy hour, we eat weed and
Eat.
right? So again, that was just really helpful for them to see, but leaders aren't doing that work with them. Right? We have to sit down with our educators and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, like, what did you do during this time? Oh, maybe you should try that, right? Have you thought about doing a science lesson? Oh no, I didn't think about that. Maybe you might want to pull on that because that can get some inquiry going on, right? That can
Mm-hmm.
pull,
Absolutely.
like really being intentional with the planning pieces of just the strategic about being prepared for not only that day but throughout the year. But we have to start early. We have to start in the beginning and lead with that. So like I said, PD started in the beginning of September, and we went all the way through, and I created a scoping sequence based on where the indicators were low to do that. Because another thing is when kids are in centers, the TAs are the ones, circling and, making sure
Right.
that students are on task. But are you asking higher order thinking questions, or are you just, hey, are you
Making sure
okay?
they're right. You making a pizza? All right. Shoo, next on to the
Come on.
box center.
Hey, listen, like what? Ask them questions, right? And a quick hack when you're planning for the unit, put your questions up for the unit because the curriculum provides some questions, right? You don't have to go thinking and looking for certain things. There's already there, right?
Right.
Use your resources, use what you have. So put it up in your center because if you don't use it, another adult who's coming into the room would also
Right.
use the level of planning and intentionality with class just has to be, on par because if you don't use it almost, Marita, it's like low level, right? Very, very low level, very just, subpar, kids just coming to school, right? But when we look at it through the lens of class, it's that high level, higher order, just it feels classy, right? It feels good to be in a rich environment where students are learning, they're
Yes.
engaged, they can use the language. I love going into classroom and kids are able to tell me, yeah, we're learning about rectangular prisms. What?
Yes, and teachers feel successful, right?
Yes.
Because so we were talking about these observations and in what you were talking about, and just practicing and massaging that class muscle all year long, right? It's now a habit, and so it's second nature. I don't have to think about it when someone comes to observe because we've been doing this.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not another thing. It's just something that's happening that day.
Yeah.
Right.
And just thinking about teacher habits, right? Like, I think we are struggling now to come back to a sense of normal with our
Yeah.
teacher habits with, coming out of the pandemic. Like, oh yeah, we used to do that. Oh yeah, we need you to bring it back, right? We need you to do that again, right? Or like figure out how we can even magnify it, right? Because what I don't like, especially for certain things like letter of the week, right? Please don't sit on the carpet and tell the kids, "Oh, our letter of the week is A." Baby, if you don't put something in a bag and shake it
Right.
up, you
Because
know,
I'm bored, right?
I'm bored, right? You put their hand in something, So because what I learned is that students learn more when they're happy, when all of
Oh,
their senses are engaged, right? So the more that we hype something up, and they'll learn it. Even when I was an educator and in the classroom teaching, I used to take my shoes off, got the little funny socks on. I'm like, oh, how you take your shoes off? Yep, because when I take my shoes off, y'all know it's learning time, right? Sit out in a circle, and I hold this book up and I tell him, you know what? I love to read. I love to read. And I want you to love to read too. And they're sitting in their carpet seats, like, oh my God, you about to read this book? And like that
and
level.
they know you're getting ready to alter the voices, right? You're getting ready to modulate. They know it's getting ready to be fun. They know it's coming.
Right.
Oh my goodness. This time has gone by so fast. I have so many things left. Hold on. All right. So we talked a lot about, how a little bit on how you get teachers to be motivated, right? And use class you focus them on the why. What are your tips on burnout?
Mm, that's a good one. I believe that point of connection from the beginning around just that relationship and acknowledging, like, como se dice, remove the toxic positivity.
Mm,
Woo!
mm,
Removing that
yeah,
because it's a real thing. I don't expect you to, I want to humanize you, right? I don't expect you to just brush everything under the carpet and then show up
right.
to work like everything is okay. No, I acknowledge, like, ooh, that was hard.
Yes.
That's difficult to deal with, right? Yes, like burnout is real. Like, how can I support you with that, right? Like, is there room in the schedule where I can let you leave early? Is there a room where I can maybe cut down this staff meeting so I can let you go? Right? Is there a point where I can say, you know what, we're fully covered today, take a late start, right? Or, really just also asking them, what do you need? Because a lot of teachers, they don't want the gifts, they don't care about all of those things. Please let me go home. I want to go lay down, or I want to be social, I want to do something, right? Because we get into the system of forcing adults to do things they don't want to do. We can't do that because then we're even forcing them to be more burnt out, right?
Right.
So
And
how
disconnected and right.
Yeah. So am I, as the school leader, create a pact with my team? Like, if you need something, please let me know. Right? If you have an appointment that you need to run to, please let me, and we'll figure it out. Because what I don't want to do is for you not to be like not being able to go get to an appointment or drop your car off to the dealership, or different things. Like, it can be stressful, right?
Very much, especially in a role that is during regular business hours, right?
Yeah. So as the program lead, as a leader, like, okay, what can I do to make sure that you get what you need? And it may be unconventional, right? It may not be something that you tell everybody. honestly, in your network, right? It's just between this is my building, this is what we're going to do here to support the vision and mission of the work that we have to do because I need you all to be well.
People first, right? But that also lends itself, that's a classy principle, right?
Yep.
That's that genuine, authentic, right? Organic caring that you were
Yeah.
talking about and humanizing them and just, what you're doing is a role, but you're a person first, right?
Yeah.
And in order for you to be effective in that role, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. I'm gonna need you to take care of your cup. What common barriers? We've heard a lot. I've heard so much wonderful ideas coming from you, right? And creating this classy culture that's just, organic and is just, it is what it is, right? This is how we're going to ride. This is the goal, right? And this is where we are planting our flag. Like, this is what we are doing. What are some common barriers that program leaders can expect if they wanted to try to do that same type of implementation?
It starts with the leader.
Mm,
that that emotional intelligence with me first. You have to know, you have to know you and know your position in leadership, right? Like some people are transactional leaders, some people are inspirational leaders, some people are, there's so many different types of leaders, but at the core of who you are, you recognize that you are leading and serving people, and that's important. So if your day to day is to micromanage everybody and make everybody feel like crap, or like, it's just not going to work well for you, right? There's a different level of leadership that comes with honoring the people that you work with. But a barrier could also be from this perspective, accountability. It's hard to hold people accountable when
mm.
life happens.
Yeah.
Right? Life is hard for folks. So you have this expectation, and sometimes folks are unable to meet that expectation, right? So hold this false sense of accountability. Like, you have to do this, you have to do, it becomes challenging to hold folks accountable. But I think from the foundation level, if you are able, everyone gets something different in my building, right? I do not treat all of my staff members the same.
Because they're
Which
different people.
they're different people. It can get you in trouble because they'll talk about it. They'll be like, "Oh, well, he did this. Well, he knew that for me." Well,
Yeah,
you're
well, hopefully they understand that you're
right.
being intentionally individualized, right? Like
Yeah,
you're individualizing based off what you know about them and what they need because
yeah.
they all need it at different times or in a different way. So,
And I think another a barrier would be just that communicating.
mm,
And a lot of leaders don't know class well, right? So they don't know how to look at the indicators, and they just know the scores, and they don't. But being that I've gone through I've taught with it, now leading with it, like I give observations and do those things, and being class certified, like I can get real with my educators and say, hey, this is what I need you to do, or what do you think you need to do? Here's the indicator. How do you think this looks like? What do you think this looks like in morning meeting? What do you think this looks like? And bringing them into that conversation, right? But I think we have a lot of leaders from the top down telling people what to do, and they've never experienced it, and that's a challenge, right? So you have to be able to communicate, like, "Hey, I don't know exactly what that is. Let me Google it." That's real. So there's some things I don't know everything about class, but if I need to know something, I'm gonna try to figure it out because the Teachstone website has lots of great resources that
we
I've
do,
pulled from.
we do.
Right? Let me pick that up on here. Right? You use that Teachstone website. It's helpful. It has stuff that
Yeah.
we can use. So I think lastly, the process, right? We have to figure out a good process. So knowing the scores, making sure that you pick your focus. I think we talked a little bit about it. And I observed in 2 week cycles. We developed these long 6, 9 week cycles. Folks even forget what they're supposed to do.
Right.
you know? So pick your focus and observe in 2 week cycles, because sometimes principals, they want to look at the whole big thing and then go in and give all this feedback. It's not going to be
Right.
helpful, right? That's a barrier too, like not being able to know specifically what to hone in on. Then, so find something to hone in on, you pick your 2 week cycle, observe your teachers with that intention, and give them that feedback, right? And I've gotten to the place in my building where I can give you in the moment feedback. Oh, can you do that again? Can we? can you ask that question again? Or can we do a turn and talk right here? This will be a great place for it. And they'll be like, okay, cool. Let me back. Right? Again, relationships. If you don't have
Yeah,
that, if you don't have the relationships, you can't navigate your billing in a way that will deem these results. And there are a lot of people doing crazy things out there, thinking that they're supporting teachers and they're not getting the results.
I appreciate that. I also love, first of all, thanks for the plug for the Teach On website. We do rock, have all the things that you need there. But you said something key too, right? Because of your journey, you also are a resource and you've built this credibility with your team because you are an observer, you've learned about it, right? And so you speak from a place of knowledge. And I do know oftentimes, sometimes when we get into those higher levels, you know, you're talking at a high level, but they can't really get into the weeds of what they can tell you because they don't really know because they haven't gone through that process. So they
Right.
have the information to be able to spot pivot in a classroom and things like that. Before we go, last thing I want to ask. So we've talked about this and I want people to have an understanding of what your group looks like. So if you could tell us, how many teachers, coaches, students, like tell us about your campus and the amount of people that you're supporting this work with.
Awesome. So I have a team of 23 that includes lead teachers, TAs, and we have extended day staff. So they're also in my classrooms, and I work with them to make sure that they're familiar with the process of class and how to ask those higher order thinking questions. So everyone gets something, right? Everyone gets something. So I do also have an implementation specialist with the Apple Tree Institute who comes in and observe teachers using the class lens. And I have about 100 or so kids in my class, in my school, with 6 classrooms, 3 and 4-year-olds.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Because 3 and 4 is rock. Thank you so much for that. This was amazing, and the time flew by so fast. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And listen, I would love to talk again. And listen, we can go.
We do this again, maybe
Yeah,
at a happy hour, a virtual happy hour. Maybe
yeah,
that's
right.
Thank you for joining us. You can find today's episode and transcript on our website, teachstone.com/podcast. And as always, behind great leading and teaching are powerful interactions. Let's build that culture together. You were amazing.
Thank you.
You were so great.